That's good. All right. Well, thank you for having me, everyone. As mentioned, my name is Kevin Kirkham. Advance. There we go. So I've been with the utility industry for over 30 years, all at NIPSCO or NiSource. NiSource is the parent company for NIPSCO. I currently work in our strategy and risk integration area, focusing on electric vehicles. But that just changed roles. And so for the past 8 years, I was manager of our new business area. And in that role, I was in charge of new business, and that's any type of new construction from customers, helping them from the smallest residential to the largest steel mill. We would help with the contract and costs to figure out how much it's going to cost to connect to the utility. And part of that role is also all of our renewable energy programs. So from the customer side. So if anyone's interested in putting solar, wind, or biomass and turning it into electricity, we have programs, and I'm going to talk about those, as well as selling your natural gas back to the utility or getting it into the utility market. Real quick, I think most people probably are familiar with NIPSCO. If you're from the area, we're the local natural gas utility. For those that are not around here, we're the electric and gas utility for much of the top third of Indiana. So we have about 480,000 customers that are electric and 820,000 natural gas customers. This is NIPSCO. So as part of our NiSource family, NIPSCO is one of our 7 utilities. We're the only electric utility. We also have natural gas companies in Ohio, Virginia, Maryland, Kentucky, Pennsylvania. So from the Midwest to New England, we have natural gas customers as well. Sorry. Okay, so the agenda for my presentation today is to kind of give a high-level overview of everything that I'll be talking about, but then dive down into a deeper dive on the electric side, starting with the electric side, talking about how there's customer programs for utilities to sell electricity back to the grid. And then I'm going to transition to selling natural gas back to the natural gas market, and then talk about the interconnection for both electric. So then I'll wrap things up after talking about the interconnection process with just providing a little bit more information on other utility programs that are available in the sustainability and renewable sectors. So without further ado, okay. So overall, we're going to talk, this is kind of a summary of the presentation in one slide. There's many different options for customers to sell electricity back to the utilities. And so this is generic to any utility. Not every utility will have all of these programs, but every utility will have at least one of these programs for customers to take advantage of. The various programs are net metering, electric, excess distributed generation program, feed-in tariff programs, cogeneration tariffs, and then utility scale PPAs. The next couple slides, I'll go into depth of each one of those. But each one is slightly different and has a different market value. Depending on your project, you might choose a different one, depending on what project you're interested in. Conversely, if instead of selling electricity, the customer wants to deliver natural gas back to the market, then we have options for that too. This is where we have thousands of customers now, the advantage of selling your electricity back. The natural gas market selling customers is more just recent activity on that, but we'll talk in depth about what that process looks like. And then we're going to get into the interconnection process. So we're going to start with the offtake agreements and how that works, and then we'll get into the cost structure of being able to deliver your power and your natural gas back. So starting with the electric side of the the meter of the program. As I mentioned, there's various different programs. So I'm going to talk about each one and go through the details. If customers are interested in selling electricity, they can choose any one of these. The first one is the net metering program. Now, I'm going to start with that one. However, I'll mention that this program is no longer a viable option in Indiana for new customers. So we have many thousands of customers that are currently on net metering programs, but they're all grandfathered in. So in Indiana, legislation passed in 2017 that ended or grandfathered people in net metering and then had a phase-out approach for new customers, such that by the end of 2020, the middle of 2022, no new customers can opt into this program. But I'll talk a little bit about how it works, because it is an option in Illinois and most other states yet. But throughout the United States, they're starting to transition away from net metering. And I'll mention why. Actually, I'll say that now. So as technology started, just with any type of new technology, whether it's solar panels or anything, the cost of that technology is extremely expensive when it's first starting out. And so usually it needs some type of subsidy from the federal government, from the utilities, or some form or fashion to make it economical to move forward in the market. And so one of those programs is called net metering. And so net metering works basically like spinning your meter backwards. It's giving you the retail value of the energy you're producing, even though all you're sending back is the electricity portion. So when you think of your utility bill, it's comprised of many parts of our business to keep us operational. It's the electricity itself. It's also the distribution lines, the cost to run substations, the accounting department, our call center. All of those costs come into the total cost of our operation, and then we charge a utility rate set to recover those costs. And so that utility rate depends on the type of customer, but it's in general around 15 to 18 cents here in the Midwest. It's a lot higher on the East Coast. It could be at 30, 35 cents. But that's kind of the value you're getting. And so the way net metering works is that you're producing energy and sending it back to the grid. We'll have a meter that's there at your business, home, or operation that is then recording the net energy being transferred either into the building or out of the building back to the grid. And so if you have a generator, whether it's solar or a biomass, and say it's a megawatt in size, and you're consuming in the business or home, say you're consuming 400 kW. That means that you're producing 600 kW more than you're producing. So we're going to have the meter after your load, meaning after that 400 kW consumption. And so that meter is going to be a bidirectional meter, which means it has two channels. It has an in channel and an out channel. The in channel is going to record the consumption of power flow going into the operation. The outflow is going to be the energy being transmitted from the generator after the consumption back to the grid. So in this example, we had 1 megawatt of generation, 400 kilowatts of consumption at the farm or wherever the building is. And then you have excess of 600 kW. That 600 kW is going to be reported in the out channel and delivered back to the grid. When the utility starts the month, they're going to take a snapshot of the in channel and out channel recorders. And then at the end of the month, they're going to take another snapshot. And those recordings are going to take pulses every second to decide throughout the month and say how much energy is being transferred into the building or back to the grid. And so net metering works by taking both of those channels and then netting them together at the end of the month. The net effect of that is that the customer is getting the retail value power price for all of the generation that they're either consuming or generating. So they're getting paid basically 15 to 18 cents for every kWh that's being produced. That's very attractive. The price of power itself is like 4 cents. So, you're getting quite a bit more payment for the energy being created on this. Like I said, that metering that option is closed, however, for new customers here in Indiana, but it is open for other states. The program that replaces net metering is called the EDG program, Excess Distributed Generation Program. It works similarly in that you have the same bidirectional meter, in channel and out channel. However, how it's being billed is different. And so in that same example that we had 1 megawatt and 400 kilowatts of consumption, that 400 kilowatts is getting that retail value of 15 to 18 cents, because that's before our meter. But everything at the meter and beyond, that's now in the out channel, instead of being netted against the in channel at the end of the month, it's going to be given a credit in a dollar form on the bill, paid out at 125% of what's called the LMP price. And LMP price is the locational marginal price of the utility that you're providing, that's providing service to you. So that LMP price will change depending upon the location, but not significantly. It's right around 4 cents for everything in the Midwest on average. So 125% of that price is, for last year, was $0.043 per kWh, or 4.3 cents. So you'll see the difference here between those two programs. Net metering is a better program for customers that are given the energy, because it's paying 3 times the rate for the power being produced after the consumption. And so that's how that program works. And so that, once again, the reason it switched was because the technology in general has come down in price. And so legislation or politicians have deemed that it's at a point now where you don't need quite the subsidization that you needed in the past. And so now throughout the country, states are shifting more towards these type of programs. And so Indiana's already there. But there are other programs that are available from utilities, depending on the utility. The next one is called Feed-in Tariff Program. Feed-in Tariff Program started around 15 years ago. And most of these programs have been completed in the United States, but there are several utilities that still have them out there. NIPSCO is one. As I mentioned, we started our program about 15 years ago. And it works a little differently than the other two programs, in that 100% of the generation that a customer would produce gets delivered back to the utility. So the meter basically is placed at the generator, not after the consumption of the building or operation of the customer. So 100% of this is going to this feed-in tariff program, and we'll have a price depending on the technology. So there's a different price if it's a wind project, if it's a solar project, or if it's coming from biogas. We started this 15 years ago, and the technology was at the infant stage. And so the technology price had to be extremely high back then to get a project to go. For instance, like solar was like 37 cents, which is really high. And it had a 2% escalation for 15 years. Every time we went through that capacity, we started reducing the amount of availability and reducing the price, because the technology curve cost came down, so we didn't need to pay that same price for the power to have a project go. It was kind of a fun time that I had, because the first time we had it, the prices were so high, we had so much demand that we ended up holding a lottery for it. And so we actually had it was a really fun day, because we had bingo balls, and we had a live stream where we would have everyone submit their application, and we would, have a bingo ball per application, and then call it out, and that's who won the capacity for the project, and those projects moved forward. We went through 3 rounds of that to get to the current mix that was out there. We don't have any more rounds open, future rounds open, but the current one that was last done still has 4 megawatts open for biomass. So all of the larger solar, all of the larger wind are complete. They still have a really small, they call it micro wind and solar. That's 10 kW or smaller, like for homes. But for larger things, the only one that's open is for biomass projects. And the price on that is 9.1 cents. It's 100% of the power, and it's a 15-year contract fixed, so it doesn't increase. So if you're a biomass gas producer and you wanted to create electricity from it, you have options. You can either go EDG or you can go feed-in tariff, and they both have differences. It really depends on your operation, which one makes the most sense for you. One other difference I'll also mention now, for net metering and excess distributed generation, we buy the energy from you. The customer keeps the renewable energy credits that are created from the project. Because if you're producing from biogas or solar or wind, you're not only creating energy, you're creating renewable energy. And there's a value of that up and beyond the value of the energy. And you can sell those renewable energy credits that are created into the market for value. So if you're in the EDG or net metering, you keep those credits. If you operate under a feed-in tariff and you're selling that electricity to the utility gets those renewable energy credits, and then the utility will sell those into the market and credit the rest of the company. The next program is called cogeneration tariff. I should also mention the first three programs, net metering, excess distributed generation, and feed-in tariff program, there's a maximum size on the amount of capacity that customers can produce, and that's 1 megawatt. So if you're producing more than 1 megawatt, that's not a viable option for you. Either reduce the generator back down to a megawatt, or you can sell it on the cogeneration tariff. It works similarly to the EDG tariff. In that you can get the retail value on the consumption, and this is only anything after the consumption, but it's priced slightly different. Instead of 125% times the LMP price, the price is set yearly on the avoided cost rate that's filed from each utility. That avoided cost rate has a summer and a winter component to it. It actually also has an on-peak and off-peak period. But the summer and winter changes price, where the EDG remains the same all year long. And so you'll see it's 4.1 cents and 4.6 cents, depending upon the season, which on average, gets very close to the 4.3 cents on EDG. So it works similarly, but it's slightly different. And it's you would only really choose the cogen probably if you're over a megawatt in size. And then finally, I don't anticipate anyone here going with this, but you can also, utilities have what's called an integrated resource plan that's filed every 3 years and updated annually. And so we'll go out into the market with an RFP for power. And so if you're a super large scale entity, whether it's solar or any type of operation, then you can bid into those markets for that. But I don't anticipate that being an option for most customers. And if anyone has any questions, please feel free to stop me. I have, you can ask questions at the end. If you have something that's burning, please just let me know. Moving over to natural gas. As I mentioned, we have a couple of customers that have gone this route, and we're getting a lot more interest. But it is relatively new compared to the electric side. Here, you can deliver your renewable natural gas back to the market because there's tremendous value if it's coming from renewable natural gas, whether it's landfill gas, biogas, there's tremendous value. The utilities may buy the gas from you, but most likely you're going to get a better price going to a third-party marketer. And there's many marketers that are out there, BP as a marketing service, but there's many of them out there. And they'll give you the best price. If you came to NIPSCO, we're only going to be interested in giving you the value of the natural gas. So we don't need the renewable natural gas from the purchase. So we're only going to give you an equivalent of $3 a decatherm. Where renewable natural gas in the marketplace, a third-party marketer might give you $24 a decatherm. So 8 times the value of the natural gas, just content of the natural gas that it's worth. And so why is there such a demand and excess, at a price that's so much different? Well, the value is really on policy. So in certain states, they have regulations that will say that if so much of the industry has to come from renewable attributes. And so much of the market is being driven by California. So these third-party marketers are going to take the gas. It's got to get into the transmission system, the natural gas transmission system. But then they're able to kind of paper transfer it so that it comes out in California, and they sell it into the market at that high premium. and they give you the value of that. If you're going to do that, you go to a third-party marketer and sell that, deliver that gas back into the system, then we're going to tell you where you can deliver it, because there's got to be an injection point for it, and I'll get into that process. But you'll also have to take a tariff service from the gas utility that's a balancing, renewable gas balancing service. Now, what does that mean? That means you're going to be nominating gas, and then we're going to balance it for you. You're going to say how much gas today or tomorrow that you're going to deliver to us. And then we're going to see the meter that comes back tomorrow and tell you, did you deliver that gas or are you off? And if you're off more than a bandwidth, there's a penalty and so forth. And every day you got to nominate this gas. And so I believe most customers just contract with a third-party marketer to do that for them. So they'll do that, all that for us. But that's basically how we work with that system. All right. So that's basically how you would structure the price you'll get for the power or the price you'll get for the natural gas. But what does it cost to deliver that electricity or gas, back to the grid? So that's what I'll talk about next. For every utility, you can find the process on the website. If you went to nipsco.com, and every utility is the same, you'll see something, on the main part of the website that will get to a renewable energy section. For NIPSCO, if you drop down on that first top tab where it's services, this drop-down screen comes out. And if you look over to the right, there's a section called renewable energy, and it has various on the electric programs, green power, net metering, feed-in tariff, EDG rate, etc. If you click on those links, then it gets to the information of the program, and you can see everything that I just said, and then some. And then as renewable natural gas is right here. The other thing that will be is in that information is an application process, an interconnection agreement. And so depending on which program you're on, it will have the application process. I'll start on the electric side. And so I'll mention, well, this is the same. Doesn't matter if it's feed-in tariff, EDG, or cogeneration. There'll be an application for an interconnection. For everyone in this room, it's going to be an interconnection level 2, which is up to 10 or 2 megawatts in size. Remember, if you want the feed-in tariff or the EDG, you can only go up to 1 megawatt. If you want the cogen, then level 2 goes up to 2 megawatts. If you happen to be bigger than 2 megawatts, you're going to go to a level 3. Which is just more expensive. I really won't talk about that here because I don't think that many people will be over 2 megawatts in size. There's an application fee, small, modest. It's $50 plus $1 per kW. So let's assume you're a pretty large operation and you're going to have a megawatt of power being created. And so then the application fee would be $1,050. We'll take that application with the fee, and we're going to then hand it over to our distribution planning team, which is an electric distribution planning team. And they're going to look at the application, look where your farm is at, and all of the infrastructure that the utility has serving that farm and surrounding area, and then determine, do we have enough capacity on our lines to be able to take that power? If we don't, then we're going to need to do some upgrades. We may have to include, increase our substation. We might have to increase the capacity of a distribution line, or tell you we have to go to a transmission line for that. Right away, we should know, after a couple of days of looking at it, do we need to do more information on it or not? And there's really going to be based on 2 things: location, number 1, and then the size of the system, number 2. If it's over 0.5 megawatt, which is 500 kW, we know it's going to immediately jump to an impact study. But it could go to an impact study if it's lower than that. Just depends on the location. If there's an impact study required, we're also going to ask you to submit $5,000 for us to do that impact study, which is a deal, by the way. It takes a lot of work to do an impact study. But so the total would be expecting is $6,050 for us to do most of these applications. We'll then take, it depends on the, what needs to be done. It's probably going to be at 90 days at least to do an impact study. And then we'll come back and tell you, here's what we need to do to our system, and here's the cost that we expect to incur. And the customer would have to pay 100% of that upfront. So if it costs us $250,000 worth of upgrades, we'll ask for here's the contract to move forward, and we would require $250,000 to move forward upfront. It's going to reconcile at the end to actual cost. So if it costs us $300,000, at the end of the project, we're going to bill you another $50,000. If it only costs $200,000, then we'll give you a credit of $50,000 as a check back. But you can assume it's going to be somewhere between 150, maybe up to $500,000. It could be, we've had some that go to $1 million, but those are less frequent. It all depends on location. Everything is location dependent and what circuit feeds that location. Once we get the contract complete, then we'll start construction, and the customer would start construction. And usually construction takes up to a year between the customer and the utility to get the project done and get it online. Similarly, on the natural gas side, it works very similar to the same thing. There'll be an application process. In this case, it's called a natural gas application information sheet. You'll submit. There's no application fee to start with. We'll take a look at this and then have 15 days to get back to you with two things. One, where we think is the best place to a very, very high level estimate of what we think it might cost. So we'll say, and when I say where you'll be allowed to inject into the system, so unlike on the electricity side, people use electricity every month, 24/7, all year round. On natural gas, we burn a lot more natural gas in the wintertime for heating than any other time of the year. So in the summer, we don't use that much natural gas. So we have to find a point in a pipeline that's big enough for you to inject the natural gas so we can accept it all year long. Otherwise, we're going to cut you off, through most of the year, and you won't get that value for it. So we got to find a location that is suitable to inject that natural gas. And so step one is we're going to tell you where we think that location is and what that high level cost might be. If you're happy with it, then we'll say, okay, let's go to a further engineering study. And we're going to ask for $45,000 to go to the next step. At that point in time, we'll do a detailed engineering analysis to say, okay, did what we think, is that really what, the location that makes the most sense, and is that the right cost? Even then, we're going to give you a class 4 estimate, which means it's going to be minus 30% plus 50%. These get very expensive very fast, and there's a lot of contingency just because we don't know what's under the ground. A lot of times we don't, because we talk about miles of pipeline, you have to look at easements and, will homeowners grant you that easement? So there's a lot of unknowns really still until you get to the actual implementation of the project. So 9 days later, we're going to come back and we're going to say, after the $45,000 has been paid, here's what we really think the end cost will be. And then here's a full detailed outline of the scope of that project. If you're happy with it, great. Then we'll move to a contract. And then just like on the electric side, at the end of the completion of the cost of the contract, we'll reconcile the actual costs. So if it cost $2.5 million and it came out to $3 million, we'll bill you $500,000. And if it only came out to $2 million, we'll give credit you $500,000. But it's going to reconcile to actual costs at the end. Construction, you can estimate a timeline of 18 months. And, that's probably realistic of what the timeline might look like for that. You had a question? Yeah, so there'll be a good question. And so it depends on where it's going to be injected. Most likely it can be injected to a distribution system, or it can be injected into a transmission system. Theoretically, it can go to a third-party transmission line. Most likely, it's going to go to the local utility. And so that injection site is going to be like a regulating station, and with a monitoring system, we're going to be monitoring the quality of the gas 24/7 at that injection site. Usually there might even be where the production is. There probably is another monitor there so that we'll know what that gas looks like as well. And so if the quality of the gas goes outside of the boundaries for what is acceptable from the natural gas standpoint, then it will automatically trigger and cut off the injection site. For biogas, we're not too worried about the quality of the gas as much. Landfill gas, very different. There's been a lot of instances around the country where landfill gas, depending on what's dumped in the landfill, the quality of the gas goes outside the specs, very quickly and causes a lot of damage. So, but biogas is pretty constant and not as worrisome, but it is being monitored all the time. Yeah, please.
And what is the NIPSCO quality spec? Is it 97%, 98% carbon dioxide, or greater?
Good question. I don't know that off the top of my head, but I believe it is on our website. And if you can't find it or locate it, then feel free to email me and I can email back what that specs look like. But I believe it's one of it may not be I can't remember if it's on where the natural gas section program is, or it's in our standard. They have NIPSCO standards or utility standards, generically for any utility that's on the website, and it'll be part of the utility standard that's out there. But I don't know it off the top of my head, unfortunately.
Right. Thank you.
All right. I have a couple minutes left. So two other programs I'll mention that if customers are interested in just sustainability for their farms, for their businesses, we have a green power program. And this is typical for any electric utility. They have a green power program. What's new is what's called a Green Path program. This is very new in the whole U.S. market, and it's for renewable gas. And so if customers just want to say and claim for sustainability goals that they're either consuming green or renewable energy, whether it's power or gas, we have programs for you. So green power, we're going to buy those renewable energy credits from providers that produce renewable energy from the market. And so those RECs will add a premium to your bill, and that premium is currently priced at 0.3092 cents per kWh. It's about 2% premium on a residential bill, okay? For that, you get to claim that the energy you're consuming is renewable energy. And so that's important for some producers. We have some like an envelope company that manufacturers that produces, and then they put on the back of their envelopes, it's being produced by renewable energy, and they can claim that because they're part of this program. The other option for them to claim that is if they had solar on their roof that they're selling back either in net metering or EDG, not feed-in tariff, because remember, we bought the renewable attributes as part of the feed-in tariff. But if they're doing the others, they're taking the RECs. If they don't sell it into the market for a profit, they can consume them and then claim that they're consuming renewable energy. So as part of NIPSCO, we are transitioning right now all to renewable energy, basically. We have a couple natural gas plants left, but we're switching all of our coal plants to renewable energy. Even though we're basically going to be 85+% renewable energy as a utility come 2028, customers still can't say that they're consuming renewable energy because we're selling those RECs into the market and then crediting customers' bills from those. But if you're part of the Green Power program, then you can say that you're consuming renewable energy. Just similarly on the Green Path program, we have an option where we'll purchase whatever you're consuming. If you get like 25, 50, or 100%, we will purchase 5% of renewable attributes from the market. Remember, those are really expensive, to 8 times the value of the gas. That's why we're only doing 5% of that, plus 95% carbon offsets. This is typical for what natural gas utilities are starting to give customers an option for to help meet sustainability goals of whatever their business is in. And so it's pretty expensive still. It's about 30% premium for a residential bill. But we just started this in January, and we already have, I think, close to 200 customers that have enrolled in this, and without very little marketing. So there's a demand for it. There's no doubt. That's, I think, my presentation. If there's any other questions that anyone has, happy to go through it.